War, particularly the emotional side of it, has been one of cinema's most prevalent subjects. Both soldiers and civilians' hopelessness and psychological trauma, as well as images of seemingly senseless violence and destruction, have been common tropes of the genre, and movies like Pave of Glory, All Quiet on the Western Front, or Saving Private Ryan classics. However, one, if not the best war films of all, not entirely unsuited for children, and above all, is animated. Itsuo Takahata 1988 tragedy Grave of Fireflies, which was produced by Hayao Miyazaki's Studio Ghibli, is a masterpiece of subtle storytelling, characterization, and the depiction of horrors of war, and it is, quite possibly, one of the saddest anime films ever made. Grave of Fireflies is set during the days near the end of World War II. We see Japan with their paper-thin houses and a culture of people who believe that Japan is the greatest empire in the world. We follow Seita, a young teenager, and his little sister, Setsuko, as they flee from their house during an air raid, and they soon find out that their mother has passed away from the attack, and with their father in the Navy, they travel to a nearby aunt for food and shelter. The true strength of Grave of Fireflies, however, lies in the powerful imagery it evokes. A train in the sunset symbolizes the passage from life to death. A quickly emptying box of fruit flies stands for disappearing hope, and the gleaming little fireflies that die all too quickly are a symbol for the soldiers of the Japanese Navy. In the end, the only thing that awaits them is a collective grave. What is that message? That is really up to each viewer to decide. With that said, I don't see anyone in this world who could watch this anime and not come with any sort of strong feeling at the end of it. You'll most likely think about war or humanity in some very different ways. Grave of Fireflies forces us to see the dark corners of the world, the kind of stuff that people want to forget about. You're going to see people do terrible things. You're going to see terrible things happen to good people. This film shows us just how sick the world can be. But the thing that really makes it stand out is that everything you see is believable. There's no giant monsters to fight here. There's no villain that the heroes have to take down. This is a tale of the world we live in right now. You'll see how everyday people can be pushed to their limits, which ends up changing their way of life. Honest, hardworking folks can be scared into becoming cold, bitter shells of their former selves. You'll see how people will turn their backs on one another when it comes down to protecting themselves and their families. The true monster in this film is realizing that the wonderful world we live in could be shattered in just a few minutes, leaving you with nowhere to go and without the basic necessities you need to live. In Grave of Fireflies, brother and sister Seita and Setsuko find themselves without a home following the March 1945 Kobe bombings. Their father is fighting for the Japanese Navy, and their mother dies after being severely burned in one of the blasts. They move to live with a distant aunt, who became resentful of their inability to work or go to school. After the aunt is cruel to the two children, they leave and settle in a hillside cave. Seita does everything he can to provide food and to entertain Setsuko to distance her from the war and their rough living conditions. But they can only live like that for so long. For anyone who has a younger sibling, it's easy to relate on how Seita cares for Setsuko and how he wants to keep her innocent and imaginative. He also did not want to tell her that their mom passed away, but their aunt ended up ruining that act. Everything that Seita did had to do with survival for him and his sister. There's this great scene after they move to the hillside on the first night away from their aunt. While Setsuko cries and it's too dark at night, Seita gathers as many fireflies as he could and releases them in the netting, illuminating the dark cave and providing enough light for Setsuko to feel safe. It was a magical moment and it was visually beautiful, certainly being enhanced with animation, but the feel-good moment quickly fades the next morning when Setsuko digs a hole and buries all the dead fireflies together, like their mom was buried with hundreds killed in the attacks. It's heartbreaking to see such a young girl be put through the trauma of war, but whether you like it or not, it is their reality. With the imperialization and industrialization that are so apparent in Grave of Fireflies comes hierarchies of gender, class, age, and relationships. Seita and Setsuko are treated condescendingly throughout the entire film by adults, most notably by their aunt and doctor. Seita's reluctance is conformed to the consequences of such hierarchy, such as the demands of his aunt, offering liberalization in the form of isolation, but eventually leads to his downfall. His belief in power of the Japanese military betrays his innocence, despite being victim of the systems that imperialism has imposed. He stands by his chief proponents. Doubt is only planted in his mind when it's already too late, when he discovers that Japan has surrendered and that Japanese Navy fleets have all sunk. Throughout Grave of Fireflies, we get to see a lot of the siblings' inner life and their evolving relationship, which creates a real emotion tie between them and the viewer, so that you generally feel for and with them. As expected from a Studio Ghibli production, the plot delivers with absolute stunning visuals. Background and character art alike are as detailed as it can be for a 1988 production. It's aged incredibly well and impressed even by today's standards. The animation is smooth, especially during the bombing scenes and the scenes with large amount of on-screen action. The animation looks so lifelike that even most current anime don't come even remotely close. Again, it's the little things that matter. People giving small sighs, children moving clumsily, a small frown on the face of an elderly woman. One cannot help but admire such attention to detail. The film pulls few punches and renders the grotesque, such as a scene where Seita sees his mother shortly after the firebombing, with a sort of a witted beauty. But such ugliness also gives you a beautiful scenes of tranquility, such as a flashback in which Seita gives a photograph taken with Setsuko and his parents. The music to this film is simply tear-jerking. There is no light-hearted, pleasant romp, nor is it a soundtrack that will leave you with a smile. This is a gloomy, depressing, yet beautiful soundtrack, in which so depressing that I don't think it's a good idea for one to listen it on a clear sunny day. This is not to say that there's nothing sweet about it. However, the opening theme is sad yet happy song that has a sweet feeling to it. Perhaps this is because it has innocence, lost feeling, or that is just so gorgeous that it tugs on the heartstrings of one who listens. In addition to that track, there are plenty of loving moments in which seems to be recalled of joys of childhood. Despite this brief break, a couple of happy moments, the soundtrack is overall sad and depressing. Nevertheless, the music to Grave of Fireflies is a masterwork of tragedy, lost life, and afterlife, and it also really brings the movie to life. Yoshio Mamiya deserves kudos for pulling off this job. I would recommend you watch Grave of Fireflies with the original Japanese dub and the English subtitles. I wouldn't go as far as to say that the entire English language dub is bad, but reading the words off the screen is less jarring. The voice of the youngest child, Setsuko, is what ruined it for me. I have no idea how old the performer was, but she sounded like an adult pretending to be a 3-year-old, which effectively distracts from your belief of the storytelling. Later films have improved better English-speaking performers to translate to the films, but English dub on Grave of Fireflies could do a bit of an update. I've never cried so hard at a film before in my life. There's been plenty of movies that made me tear up, but Grave of Fireflies really pulled off the emotion within me from deep down. It's a slow build as the movie rolls on and you're just hit so hard right after the other with a bad situations that's near impossible not to let loose with some of that emotion. I can easily imagine some viewers crying through the entire film. It's definitely a tough film to watch, which goes to show on how amazing it is. Never have I seen a film convey emotions like this, and in some ways torture the viewer. It is an amazing triumph for cinema, and it comes from an animation, no less. This is a war movie without CGI explosions, carnage, or militarism. It does not deceive its audience with the illusion of heroism or bravery. Instead, it focuses on the left behind of those who are afflicted with bereavement and dear poverty as a result of a war that they do not understand. Not afraid to show the harrowing aspects of their survival, or the violence that they had to witness, or the death they had to experience. Its anti-war sentiment is clear. Its refusal not to water down to these issues for contemporary audience shows the sheer integrity of filmmaking. This film is hauntingly beautiful. Anyways, this does wrap up my anime review of Grave of Fireflies. I hope you guys did enjoy this emotional piece, and if you guys do, please check it out, or if anything, comment down below and show your thoughts and opinions of this film. Anyways, of course, my name is JcGreen, and I will catch you guys in my next anime-related video real shortly. Peace, guys.